Okay, so to prepare the hair for the dry cut, I have to blow out the hair. So my intention here for the blow dry is just to get it nice and smooth with a lot of bend and body. So the fullness with the haircut actually comes from the root. So make sure you hit the root area like properly. You want that angle really high. But to maintain the body and the fullness, you have to be very subtle and discreet with the amount of tension that you use on the round brush. If you're using too much tension and you're aiming for a nice full body finish, you may end up pulling out the fullness that you're putting a lot of effort into blowing into the hair. So be aware of the amount of tension that you use with your brush. Less is more. Okay, so as I start off this dry also, with each section I'll put most of my emphasis on the root, because actually at this length the most challenging portion to dry is the root area. So first make sure the roots are nice and dry and you have a lot of fullness, right? The bump comes from the roots. So make sure you get that bump in there. And then as you work to the mid shafts, start to release some tension, and the ends, sometimes depending on the health of the hair, you'll have to adapt the amount of tension that you're using accordingly just to get the ends nice and polished. So again, the fullness comes from the roots, and as you dry the hair, do your very best to blow it out in multiple angles and multiple directions, as this will encourage a tremendous amount of movement. Okay, and a rule of thumb, to get that cuticle just nailed shut, you always have to maintain the angle of your nozzle that follows your brush at about 10 to 15 degrees. Because if you're too directly on it, you may dry the hair, but then the cuticle scales, they're not all shut in the same direction. So just be very aware of the actual angle of your nozzle. And now the hair is almost dry, so just like blow it out with my fingers. Okay, so now that the hair is nice and blowed out, we're going to start our haircut. So I'll begin on the right side. I'll section out the right side panel. And here I'm working with kind of big sections. So my first section, I'll elevate the hair up and I'll cut in a concave shape. Concave is where the length goes from longer to shorter. So I'm removing weight. When you cut the hair concave, it removes weight even more so than like a right angle, than layers, than 90 degrees. Okay, so checking for visual balance. And the next section, again, I'll elevate a little bit higher and I'll continue to cut the concave. Make sure you comb the hair from roots to ends. Now with this dry cut, I'm going to be quick about it. A lot of times in the salon, if you're kind of like running behind, you need to catch up on your schedule, and this works pretty good for long hair. Here I'm just using pretty big sections, and I can technically knock out this haircut. I'm probably thinking within like 12 minutes. So anyway, it's a good money maker. Just make sure that you have a really clear mind map of the entire technique. And throughout this entire haircut, I'll be point cutting into the ends. I'm not cutting in blunt lines, because blunt lines on dry hair, it falls really, it falls too heavy. So if I'm cutting on dry hair, I'd rather go in and point cut, because again, it falls much softer. So just making a visual assessment, and we'll do the exact same technique on the opposite side. So comb the hair up, out. So once you pull the hair to the exact elevation that you want, just for like feasibility, I can kind of like drop that a bit. I just have to make sure that I don't let the lengths that I just comb out change if I'm dropping the hair once I comb it out. So first I'll comb it up and out into the position. Once I get to the area where I can cut, then I can drop it down, so it's easier to control my shape there, because this length here is quite long. Okay, now where the head starts to round, I'll increase my elevation even more so, increase to the point, and drop it. And again, I'm point cutting. Okay, now here I'm taking one big section through the back, and I'll just connect the two sides through the back area here. Okay, so I continue cutting, just chipping into that line, and just making sure that everything visually balances. So here I'm taking a big section through the center back, and just, again, cutting in my concave shape. Okay, so connecting the top area, I'll be getting the front. I stand right in front of my guest, so I'm standing in front of the nose. And here I'm just cutting a square line that connects the two concave links through the sides. Again, next section, I'm over directing the hair to the same point where I elevated on the sides, and I'm connecting the two sides, the length to the right and the length to the left. I'm just combing the hair, making my visual assessments. Just again at the crown area, I'm connecting the two guidelines from the side and the guideline through the back. Because through the crown, I pulled the section from the entire back also. So with that last section, I was actually working with 3 guidelines. I'm just pushing the hair. I'm getting a feel for the density, because what I'll be doing next, I'm going in and I'll point cut through this haircut. So I'll go texturize the tips. So here I'm just chipping in, I'm removing weight, and here I'm working in shadows. I want a nice consistent flow of the density throughout the haircut. Okay, so still working in the same manner, just chipping into the ends, working in shadows, right? And again, when you're texturizing, you have to go for, you want an even distribution of that texture. So now through the fringe area, the thicker area I'll texturize a lot more. I'll just balance it out with the length, the density that I had through the right side, with my fingers earlier. And again, a big section through the top, and just again, if I see an area that's already a bit sparse, I texture less. The heavier areas, I'll texture more. Okay, so there's our technique. Enjoy.